Hi guys, and welcome to this episode of the Comedy Defect Podcast. My name's Winter Phonander, I'm a comedian and this is my show. I'm recording these links on Boxing Day, and while the rest of you are having your second helping of the remainder of the Christmas dinner, I am doing this, grinding it out because I care. Because the last Wednesday of the month, this is when this podcast gets released. This is episode 56 with a very hard-working comedian. He's done 5 festivals in 2017. I met him at his last one at the Edinburgh Fringe. Very funny guy, Jez Watts. He did a show called Sex, Lies and Video Games, and he also runs The Nasty Show in Perth, which is just a show run for comedians who like to write pure filth. And that's where it lives, in Perth. If you're there, go check it out. Now, if you like this podcast, you can follow us on Twitter. We're there at The Comedy Defect. If you want to follow me, it's at Winter Phonander. I'm also doing 3 festivals so far next year in 2018. I'm doing Leicester Festival. I'm going to be doing Edinburgh. I'm also going to be doing Brighton. The dates will be on my website and on my Facebook badge or my Facebook page on there, so go check that out pretty soon. If you want to donate to the podcast, you can go to Patreon, type in The Comedy Defect Podcast, and donate as much or as little as you want. And those of you that do donate, thank you, because you're paying for the people that can't. Those of you that can't donate, hey look, just leave us a nice honest review on iTunes or Podbean. Look, but it's really easy to do it on your phone. You can put as many stars as we want, like 5, and then put a nice little funny comment underneath. Let's have fun with it. Go for it. Just let yourself go, because it's really easy on your phone now. It's just simple. It's in your hand. Go for it. Do it. I'm also taking as many jokes as I can out of the Guinness Encyclopedia, and I'm going to be putting them up on Twitter still. I'm still doing that. They're on Twitter under the Twitter handle at Guinness Jokes, so go check them out there and go enjoy them. I'm going to be doing some of those one-liners that I've been taking out of that Guinness Encyclopedia for that one-liner show in Leicester, which is going to be run by Mr. Christopher Norton Walker, so come see that there. You can see them in action. I love doing this podcast because you can ask the same questions again and again, and you never know where it's really going to go. But I'd like to thank Jess for being so open and honest. This is episode 56 with a very funny, incredibly honest Jez Watts. Jez Watts.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome to the Comedy Defect. How you doing, man? You alright?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I just had a good gig. It was a little bit of a tough crowd, but I got them. I opened really well, and I closed well, and some stuff in the middle was good, and then some stuff in the middle wasn't. But the stuff that wasn't, like the MC, made real hay of afterwards in a good way. Like, he got some great laughs off the stuff of mine that didn't work. And in that way, I kind of feel like I own a little bit of that success also. And maybe that's an optimistic way to look at it. But I do look at it that way. And I got paid, so yeah, I'm happy.
It's good. And it's your first Edinburgh Fringe?
It is!
Woo, alright.
Yeah.
And you're doing your show, and your show's called what?
Sex, Lies and Video Games.
Right, cool.
Because I want to sell tickets, and people like 2 to 3 of those things. My audience does.
Something for everyone.
Yeah. I maybe self-indulgently pride myself that all my stuff is true, heightening for comedy or whatever, right? But I now do this thing at the end where I'm like, everything was true, but there's 3 lines in the show. I go back and I make jokes about the individual things that were lies, right? And then the 3rd lie that I tell them is because I have this thing in my show, in one of the bits about how I owe my girlfriend $12,000. There's a 3rd lie in that I do not currently owe my girlfriend $12,000, and you feel the audience go oh, good, she seems like a nice girl from everything else. It's good you don't owe her $12,000. I'm like, yeah, I really owe her $18,000, and then I use that as the bucket collection speech, and I think it works really well because she does deserve the money, even if I don't.
Yeah, it's fair, isn't it?
And I don't deserve it.
She let it see, in good faith, really, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I still can't work out why she gave me all that money, but she's a sweetie. Yeah, I'm very lucky.
You've been going for 5 years now?
4.5.
4.5 years.
A lot of people, I think, like to claim more time than they have. I think a lot of people like to sort of round up. Because then they feel like more of a comic, Like how long, if you do 2.5, we're like, yeah, I'm about 3 years now, yeah. And I like to, if anything, round down. So people will be like, oh, you're very good for how long you've been doing it. There was a guy in my first show here who, on the way out, at the bucket collection, because I said there's a bit I do about. I did my first solo show a year ago. He kind of, I guess, misheard it or whatever. And on the way out, he was like, so you've only been going a year? And I didn't quite hear what he said. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, wow, you're great, man. like you're so good. And as soon as he sort of walked past me, it was too late. I was like, oh, fuck, I just said I've only been doing it a year. And then I actually ran into him downstairs. And then he bought me a drink and stuff. And then he was like, yeah, you've been doing this a year. And I was like, oh, no, it's actually 4 years or whatever. And then he went, oh, well, it was good anyway. It was, like, it was still real good.
Yeah.
But if I had only been doing this a year and I was like a 4.5-year comic, like, I wish I could have been that good a year, and I was fucked. I was so bad. I was fucking horrendous for the first 6 months. I like to say that I was bad for the first year, but I was, like, really bad, I think, for 6 months. Because I was just horribly offensive and, like, no craft and real jokes behind it. I was just being offensive for offensive's sake. And I thought I was doing, like, great things for comedy, but I wasn't. But at the end of my first year, I said, you know what, I've been on the wrong track for so much of this, and I threw away everything. I didn't keep a single joke. I kept, like, one premise, and then I just started again. And, like, actually, I now brought back, and there's this joke in this show, which is from my first year. It's a little bit rewritten, but I only brought it back like 8 months ago, like just because a comic friend of mine was like, oh, why don't you ever do this joke anymore? I was like, that was part of the first year shit breed of jokes. Anyway, no, that was actually a good one, and it's back now. So,
where was your first gig?
First gig was at the tavern that was on campus. That because I like worked in the library there while I was studying, and like they just put on a gig, like just a one-off. Like they didn't normally have comedy there, and I'd been talking about doing comedy for ages. I want to be a comedian forever. But I never thought I was allowed. And then, like, I met an open micer when I was in New York, because, like, went on exchange, like, to the States. And I met an open micer, and I was like, oh, fuck, there are open micers. It's not just, like, Louis C.K. and no one, And that's something in my head was, like, like, regular people aren't allowed to do comedy. I met an open micer, demystified it, and then I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to do comedy. I wrote a collection of sort of, say, stories and things that I'd told people, and I was like, I've got an hour. This is going to be sweet. Like, I really genuinely thought I had an hour of stuff that would work on stage. But so I spent, like, say, 3, 4, 5 months, like, working on this. And then this gig sort of came up, and I was like, all right, it's my first time up. And then I did, like, say, 5 minutes. It went all right, but it was not fucking good. Like, it went good for the crowd, and I think crowds for first timers are often really nice. And there was friends of mine that came and stuff as well, so they're always too friendly. But when I look back at the stuff that I did, like, it just embarrasses me at this point. And I think that's true for all of us.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Same. What's the thing you went to the exchange to America for? What did you exchange for America?
I spent like 8 years or so at university. Because at the time I was studying to be a scientist. Like, I was studying, like, genetics and neuroscience and stuff. There was just an opportunity to do an exchange to the States. And we have this thing in Australia called HEX. I think it might be called something else now. Essentially, the government gives you like an interest-free loan to go to university. So I think you do a thing here maybe where it's not interest-free in the UK. It's changing a bit now, but like the system has been that you just get a bunch of money, all your fees sort of get covered, and then on top of that, we have, I guess you call it like government assistant branch of the government. It's called Centrelink. For students, there's like a specific pay thing. So you get not only your fees covered, but then the government just gives you free money to live on for the whole time you're studying, which is pretty great. And so I was doing that, and I was working as well. But then this opportunity came to do an exchange, and what I found out was you could, in addition to the fact they cover the exchange fee, you get like $7,000 money, where they go, here you go, this is what you can have, and it just all gets tacked onto your HEX debt, which, again, is interest-free. And it used to be, and this was my plan, it used to be that if you moved out of Australia and didn't earn a bunch of money in Australia, you never paid it back. And so I was going to steal my education and steal this money and then leave and make money overseas and never pay it back. But they've now brought in a system where you have to pay it back wherever you work, which is shit. But now that I'm a comedian, I really run an end run around that system because I make fuck all. Like, I'm $18,000 in debt to my girlfriend, you know? Like, they're not getting that money back.
And so you're a scientist in neuroscience, right?
Yeah, I was doing my doctorate in neuroscience. Like, I studied genetics and molecular biology and biomedical science undergraduate. And I did my honours thesis in biomedical science. I was doing my doctorate in neuroscience. I started doing comedy during my honours year. During my doctorate, first 2 years of that, I kind of comedy started taking more and more over my life, and I just started doing the doctorate less and less and less. But I was still getting paid to be a doctoral student, which is pretty good. But I would just go to the lab and write dick jokes.
Yeah.
And then they'll be like, hey, why isn't your thesis progressing? And I was like, listen, you don't understand. I did great at an open mic a couple nights ago. Like, it's going pretty well. And they're like, yeah, but you have an obligation to us. And eventually I was just like, oh, I want to leave. And at that point I had sort of done, let's say 2 years worth of work towards a 3-4 year thesis. My supervisor at the time, when I was like, listen, I've got to go and do comedy full time, this is like actually might be an option, she sort of sat me down, and she wasn't angry, but she was just like, listen, it kind of reflects badly on like our department if you don't finish. And so you've kind of done enough work here that you could just write it up as a master's, and we submit it as a master's, you get a master's in neuroscience, and it just sort of makes us not look like fucking idiots for accepting a comedian in, which anyone would be. You should never rely on a comedian for shit. And so I sort of wrote up the master's thesis as almost as a favour, and it just sort of scraped by the examiners. Like, it's two examiners, one person who wasn't really that familiar with the field, like their notes on it was like, oh, it's amazing, groundbreaking, so fantastic work. And then another guy who was like a specialist in the field was like, listen, this is almost unacceptable, and like it's written well, but you've kind of done nothing. And I was like, yeah, no, you're right. But then like at the end it was like, but you know, okay, you can leave and we'll just accept it. And so everyone was very pleased. But now I do have a master's in neuroscience that I have no use for. Like there's really nothing I'm ever going to do with that.
Yeah. Some callbacks to it in the whole thesis at the end. In conclusion.
Well, yeah, essentially my thesis, right, if I were to summarize my thesis, because what I was studying is that I was trying to find a way to regenerate the central nervous system in humans. So, for instance, to make spinal cord injury and paraplegia and stuff from that a thing of the past. Would have been great if I had finished it, right? But essentially my thesis reads, I tried a bunch of shit, it didn't work, science is real hard. That's pretty much the whole thesis, yeah. And so that second guy was very right and very nice to pass it. But I think maybe my supervisor called him up and was like, listen, he's not going to do any more work. Like, if you tell him to go back and do more stuff, like, this is just done. Like, he's not even going to be a researcher. Just pass him and we'll get him out.
So, like, you went to comedy, the honourable profession, rather than, like, fixing spinal injuries. That's certainly a show in that, isn't there?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it's showing it. I mean, I will say there's a bunch of people in wheelchairs who are not walking around right now because I went to comedy. But, you know, they say laughter's the best medicine.
Yeah, and not for those guys.
Not for back injury.
No, definitely. There's limits to laughter. Yeah. Oh, you got your master's. And you did your first gig and it went well, and you've been living in Perth now, and you also run the Nasty Show, is that right?
Myself and a few comics, we run a production company in Perth called Infinite Jest Comedy. Yeah, a couple of years ago, we sort of came up with this concept. Well, I stole a concept show from Montreal, because there's the Nasty Show in Montreal. It's like a very famous show. It's run for 20 years or whatever. My main writing partner, Glenn Grimwood, he just naturally writes filthy, like horrific stuff. And he always dials it back for club gigs or whatever. And he's really funny. Comic does really well. But he was very frustrated like a couple of years back, like coming up to Perth Fringe. And he was just, you know, like, he doesn't have an outlet for this stuff. Like, he's written so much on this. And he's like, there's no audiences never want to hear these kinds of things. Like, they just pull back from when he tries. So we set up this show, mainly just so he would have a forum where we were just like, okay, what if we just do this show that the whole point of the show is that it's fucked. Right? And then if we advertise it that way, then the only people who come will be fucked people. It'll be like a safe place for horrible human beings. And if we do that, then, you know, you just do your thing. And then he was like, I guess, maybe. And he's always very reluctant to do, like, gigs and all that kind of thing. And so I'm always pushing him to do things. And he sort of half agreed that was okay in principle. And then the next day I called him up and I was like, hey man, I registered the show, I paid it, it's called The Nasty Show, you're hosting, and it's happening. He was furious at me. He was like, well, I don't want to fucking do this. Like, you put so much on my shoulders now. And I was like, no, it'll be fine. And in the end, like, we got someone else to host a night, and then I hosted a night, and like, he only had to host one of them, but it was great. Like, it went gangbusters. It sold out every night of its run in Perth Fringe, and like, we made a bunch of money, which we didn't expect. And it turns out there was just this untapped market in Australian festival scenes, I guess, for just like a really dirty, filthy show. And we were trying to find a name that wasn't The Nasty Show, because that's from Montreal, but we kind of couldn't find anything that really spoke to exactly the tone, you know, that was as good a word. And so we ended up registering the trademark in Australia, so now we're fine legally.
Oh, great.
It's all good, and we're unethical but legally covered. But yeah, so we did that the first year at Perth Fringe, and then like that went great, and then we got into this other festival that comes to Perth called it was Perth Comedy Festival, which is like a few months later. Did it there, it went great there. This year, we did it again in Perth. It quadrupled in size in terms of like tickets and stuff. They just gave us a huge venue, and we like packed it out and made a bunch of money again. Did the Perth Comedy Festival again. Took it to Sydney Comedy Festival and did great there. And like now, what we're going to do is like next year, we're going to also go to the Melbourne Comedy Festival, maybe Adelaide, and we're probably going to bring it here to Edinburgh next year as well, because I'm having a great time. It's like, I'll definitely want to come back next year. But it's this cool example of how, like, if you just do what you want to do in comedy, I think, or of anything in life. But if you do a thing you're passionate about, and then you'll do it better than you would do other things that you're not passionate about, and then there'll be someone that appreciates that. Because we could have just kept trying to work into the club system for, you know, the stuff that they wanted. Like the best paying gig in Perth, the guy who runs it really is a fan of people doing clean comedy or cleanish and doing the same act again over and over again. He's like, he wants a predictable thing for his audience. He doesn't want anyone to get offended. And so we really, like, in Perth, there's some sort of cachet to doing that gig and stuff. So we were always, when we first came out, be like, how do we get into that gig, you know? But I'm not super dirty, but I'm not clean by any stretch. And, like, you know, my friend is really funny, but, like, he loves really filthy stuff. And, like, we just were like, what do we do? You don't have to get into the thing that you think you have to if you just make something for yourself.
Australia's a big place, right?
It is.
Differences in gigging around Australia. Where's the nastiness most rife, if you like? You know, where does dirty stuff go down the best in the country?
Well, do you mean like versus cities or whatever?
Yeah. But let's go for the big
cities. Here's the thing: there's filthy people in every city.
Great.
Yeah. I've done a bunch of gigs like in most cities in Australia. I think in general there's not a huge cultural divide between places. Really, that was like a real test when we took it to Sydney. We started this in Perth where we sort of have a fan base, we run a weekly show, and that gives you a nice little leg up in terms of getting an audience. And we thought, we'll try it in Sydney, and we'll see what happens. We'll probably lose money, we thought. Because I was taking my solo show there as well, and I was like, listen, just come with me, Glenn, and we'll try it, and we'll see what happens. The first show we had 15 people in a 200-seater, and it was tough. It actually was okay. It was way better than it sounds. Like, no, because obviously it's brutal.
Yeah.
And I like, when we saw them come in and we were like, fuck, this is going to be the worst, right? I was emceeing it as well. But, like, I brought everyone to the front and I was like, listen, this is what it is, blah, blah, blah. And I did a good job setting it up. And we had actually like really great acts on and stuff that were in Sydney for the festival, because all the best people in the country go to that festival. And the show was actually kind of okay. And then the next show, which was the next day, we had like 55 in the same venue. The next week, which is the final two shows, we only do it on Fridays and Saturdays, it was sold out both days. And it was just this great thing of nobody knew it. And then some people came and they enjoyed it, and they told some people. And then more people came and they enjoyed it, and they told some people. And no one else is doing that show.
Yeah.
So it's this thing of, like, once it filters to the people who want that, well, then they become really, like, almost loyal, like, really loyal fans to it, because they haven't gotten that from anywhere else, you know? Like, there's plenty of people who will do offensive stuff, but people who are, like, really want that, and specifically that, it's like there's nowhere to go to get it. So as soon as we realized we were onto something, we were like, okay, we have to roll this out to every festival before other people like beat us to the punch. We want to control all dirt in Australia.
Nice. So you're gigging over here now. Do you find any major difference between gigging here and gigging in Australia?
I mean, it's interesting because it's a festival, right? So it's always going to be different than how it probably is throughout the year. Cultural differences. I'm not like super referencey in my act or whatever, but like I have a joke that references pants in the Australian definition of that being trousers, and I've been doing it, and I only realised today, like not even on stage, where I was just listening to a podcast, and I went, oh shit, really? And I've been telling people a joke about my, like, that references my underwear by mistake, you know, because you guys have a stupid word for underwear, which is pants, and that's what you wear on the whole legs, and you guys are wrong. But, yeah, there's word choice things, probably, you know, cultural assumptions and things go into things as well, but, like, I have another joke that references, like, a huntsman spider, which is a very Australian sort of thing to run into in your backyard. Overall, it's been more or less the same. Like, my goal with my material and stuff is that it's pretty universal. Like, if I find stuff only really works with a certain crowd, apart from dirt, like, if you're not cool with dirt, you can get the fuck out of my audience. But, yeah, if I find stuff, like, only works with a certain crowd because it's maybe real specific, or it's really specific to me and my experience, I kind of get rid of it, even if I like it. Even if it works really well with a specific crowd, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to be able to work for every audience and everywhere. And this is the first time I've geeked outside of the country. Like, I've lived in a bunch of different countries, but I was never in comedy. So it was really interesting. I assumed it would be more problematic to come to Edinburgh. I thought there'd be way more things I would have to change, and it's been more or less alright.
Did you put your performer from a very young age, I guess, were you?
Like, I did drama in high school, and I did... Do you call it O-levels, like the final sort of exams and stuff?
O-levels are... Well, over here, O-levels.
What's, like, the final year stuff that gets you into university? Is that O-levels?
In Ireland, it's leaving cert, but over here it's O-levels.
Okay.
And you have, like... You have in junior cert in Ireland, and in this country it's GCSEs.
Okay, cool.
Well, yeah, O-levels.
Well, all that stuff.
So
in my, like, final year of high school... Because they're like all the subjects that you sort of like, you get your final exams and stuff, and like that's what gets you entrance into university and stuff, depending on how you do. So yeah, I did drama like in my final year, not because I was like I want to be doing performance, but just because I was like, well, that's some fucking easy grades right there, you know, like you just do a monologue and whatever, and like also a lot of pretty girls do drama, and I was like, I want to hang with pretty girls. Turns out like then they just see you as a friend, so it didn't really work out. You want to do sports and shit, and then they're like, yeah. But yeah, so I did drama in high school, and I was like in the high school play and stuff, and like musicals and shit. But then I didn't do any performance for 10 years because I started comedy like 29, and I always sort of tried to be a sort of funny person, or like I had a lot of jokes and funny stories and stuff to tell people. That's how I got laid and stuff. It's like just by being silly and fun. It's like I'm not a big strong man. I'm not impressive in that way, but if I can entertain you for long enough, then maybe we'll have sex at some point because you enjoy being around me. And so I was always that kind of person, and I just loved stand up and like watched a lot of it. Yeah, as I said before, like I kind of didn't think I was allowed.
There was no career path for in Oz, or is it like...
I didn't know there was stand up in Perth.
And did you? Okay,
I did not know there existed the opportunity to get up. I only had like a sort of just a very woolly idea of even what open mics were, you know, at that time, because stand-up's now permeated everywhere and everyone knows where everything is. Say like from when I was 19 to 29 when I started, it wasn't until maybe say 26, 27 that I really knew what an open mic was. And even then, I never thought it would be in Perth or there would be anything there. And like, there was not many clubs, but there was like, you know, a club or two really the whole time I was interested in it, and I could have started way earlier. But I just didn't know there was an opportunity. And then when I got back and there was that gig at the university, like I met people there and I was like, hey, where do you do comedy? And they said, oh, you should contact this place, contact that place. And like then I was like, great, okay. And at that point I met my open micer, and then I'd gotten told where I could perform. And so I could start.
So Sex, Lies and Video Games, that's your first show, right?
No, that's the title from my first show. Sure. This is my second show. So I did that that was last year, start of the year, like the Perth Fringe is like February. So I did it then. And that was Sex, Lies and Video Games. And it was like, probably, I think I used an opener for 10 minutes, and then I planned to do 40, and I probably did 33. Some of it was good, and some of it was just there to fill time. Like, it was halfway through, I fucking did a costume change, and I came out as a character. I did like 4 minutes of stand-up as a character called Topical Non-Topical Comedian. And the whole premise of the character was he'd been alive for like 1,000 years, and he wrote topical comedy jokes really slowly. And then so he would do jokes from throughout history as topical comedy. Hey, you hear about this Black Plague thing. People keep talking about Black Plague. I get real comfortable with people talking about Black Plague. I think you should call it Plague of Colour. Like that kind of thing. And it was dumb. It was real dumb. And also the fact that I ran off stage to change into a blazer and then come back on was stupid. But I needed to fill time, honestly. Like as it was still a few minutes shy of really where it should have been. It should have been a 50-minute show. It was like, 40, 45. But there were some things in it that were good, for sure. And it was really just to get out of the way and be doing comedy for a longer format. Because at the time in Perth, there were way less clubs than there are now, and this was a limited amount of stage time. And doing a show was a way to just get a bunch of stage time, like you do 4 or 5 nights of 50 minutes, and not that I was doing 50, but then that's 200, 250 minutes. That's a bunch of 5-minute spots, that you're getting in a real short period of time. And sure, you have to pay some money or whatever. I mean, I kind of broke even on the show, but like I planned to spend the money. But it's worth it. It's an investment. And so that was my first show. This year in Perth Fringe, I did a show called Smug Face, because I have kind of a smug face. I
know the feeling with that.
Yeah. You're a piece of shit too.
I'm the smug fucking face as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so I have like smug face. I used to have a joke. I used to have a joke about it. Yes. And I was like, oh, that's a great name for a show, and blah, blah, blah. But it turns out it wasn't a great name for a show. It's maybe a good name for like an album title if you already have a crowd. What I learned that Fringe was that when people see a show called Smug Face, they think, well, I probably won't like that person. Why would I buy a ticket? And then, so it was really hard to get people in, even though it was a much better show, and it was way better comedian, better known. It was much harder to get people in that year, just with that, this year, for that title. And so then when I went to Adelaide, it was too late to change it, and I did it as smug face and stuff. But then people on the show were like, why should I, like, literally asked me, why should I come to the show? And I was like, I actually don't have a good answer for you and stuff. So then when I went to Sydney, I just went, okay, I'll call it Sexualizing Video Games because that sold tickets, but it would be the new show because I never do like narrative stuff. It's just all my stand-up. So yeah, so the show title I'm bringing is the first title, but it's all the newest best stuff I have currently.
Best of.
Yeah, but essentially I think that's what I'm always going to do. And maybe at some point I'll do a narrative show, but certainly next year it's only going to be like my best stuff, which hopefully is all just my newest stuff, you know? Like this show that I'm using reuses like let's say 7 minutes from that first show. That was great. It's the closer and a bit that there's a callback to. And more or less everything else is new, but it's like that. It was just it's just a really good closer and stuff. And so I was like, you know, nobody in Edinburgh has seen me before. They don't know that I'm reusing stuff. It's fine. I'll just give them the best show I can give them. But yeah, next year obviously I've got to have all new because I'm going to be touring the cities I've been before. So
you're saying that you used to tell, you're telling stories to ladies to to have your way.
Just to confuse them.
Smoke and mirrors.
While like a hand creeps over their leg. Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, what's your best story that you would like? Would you be like, this is okay. The situation's not going so well. Okay, this is the one. This is the goal. This is, and anything that happens after this, I've given the best story.
That's
act outs and everything in it. Like
it's a 20-minute story though. Like legitimate.
Great.
Well, let me. So the first time I did magic mushrooms, I had never done them before, and I was with a group of, like, say, 16 people, and we'd all never done them before, and there was one guy in the group that knew. There's this place, like, a couple hours drive, like, down south from, like, Perth City called Bailing Up, and, like, mushrooms just grow there, and, like, people drive down and they pick them, and they do their trips and stuff, right? So we all piled in 2 cars, and we went down there, and then we're all, like, looking through these fields and no one knew what they looked like. So everyone's like just picking up random shit and running up to the guy and be like, is this the magic mushroom? He's like, no, that'll kill you. Don't eat that. Like, that's just cow shit, you know? Like, don't eat that. And then, like, we ended up, like, we got, like, a pretty big bag of mushrooms and we drove back up and he cleaned them all off and then we're all in this friend's house. And he portioned them all out for everyone. He said, okay, everybody, I've put this in 2 piles for each of you. This is a good trip and then this is another good trip. So you both got enough for 2 good trips. So you eat you half and then put the other half away, eat it later. So we all ate the first half, and then like half an hour went by, 40 minutes went by, and everyone was just like, yeah, I'm not really feeling it yet. And the guy had left. And so and we're like, yeah, not feeling it yet. It doesn't really seem to be working. Like, I guess they're not as strong as he thought they would be or whatever. And so then we all collectively decided, okay, we should all just eat our second batch. Because obviously, the wrong amount of mushrooms to take is not enough. And so we all eat our second batch, and then like say 10, 15 minutes goes by, and like the first batch now comes on, and we're all having a great time. And like I'm laying on the couch, and like Jimi Hendrix is playing, and I can see like the treble clefs like moving through the air and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is great. Yeah. A friend of mine, like, he's walking around the room, and he walks up, he looks to the left, looks to the right, and then he sits down next to me, he stares at me, and he says, hey, Jez, I'm stuck in a loop. And he looks away, and he looks back, and says, I'm stuck in a loop. And then he gets up, and he walks around the room, and then I watch, and like, he's doing like a circuit, like, and he's got little points, like, it's like 6, 7 different, like, almost like like little stops on his tour. And then he comes down next to me, he looks left, he looks right, he sits down, looks at me once, says, Jez, I'm stuck in a loop. Looks away, looks back, I'm stuck in a loop. And then he's just doing this for a while, and then another friend comes up and he's like, hey man, like, I just created an extra finger on my hand. I have 6 fingers on my hand now. And I was like, that's real cool, man. Like, I'm real high. And then someone calls out and she's like, hey, a friend of ours is having his 21st birthday party just down the street. He's having a big house party. We have to go and see him. It's his birthday. Like, we can't just be like, we took mushrooms, we didn't come, we're bad friends, and we do that. And so people were like, okay, cool. And about half the group was like, cool, we can go. And half the group was just like, nah, it's just too much. The guy's in the loop, he can't go anywhere. He's got no options. And so, like, I was one of the people that all went down the street, and we got to the party and stuff, and it was like a lot of people. It was like, say, like 200 people in this like big like backyard and stuff, DJs playing and stuff. And it was a lot of stuff. And I started to get real scared, right? And then I kind of don't remember the next thing that happened, but I was told this later. I was like sitting in this kind of a thoroughfare room in the house where it was like dark. It's like you would just walk through it to get to where like the bathroom is. And I was huddled in the corner and like shivering, just repeating to myself, I have no conception of reality right now. I have no conception. And some people walked by and they were like, oh, they kind of knew me and stuff. They're like, oh, it looks like Jez is having a bad time. And this girl came up and said, hey, Jez, are you okay? And I said, I have no conception of reality right now. She said, do you want me to take you somewhere private? Like, do you want me to like put you in my bedroom and stuff? And I was like, and I was nodding and I was like, yeah, I have no conception of reality right now. And she's like, okay, cool, I'm going to take you now. And she like took me to the bedroom and she's like, you okay? You okay? And then I looked at her like trying to like look through my eyes like, thank you. And I was like, I have no conception of reality right now. You know? Like thumbs up. Like that's the only word I can say. Yeah. But I was still trying to communicate with her. She got it and she was fine. So she closed the door. And then I was in there for a while and I was kind of freaking out. And I needed to have a shit. I was like picking on the door and the bathroom's just out there. There's one bathroom in the house for the party. I waited till the line thinned out and then I went to the bathroom. I locked the door. And then I looked at the toilet paper, and then I looked at the window, and then I looked at the chair, like the seat. And then I looked at the toilet paper, I looked at the window, I looked at the seat, I looked at the toilet paper, and I was like, oh no, I'm stuck in a loop now, like I can't do it, but I have to shit still. And I'm like just looking between these three things, and like while I'm doing this, because I can't stop doing this, it's like I start to like wrestle my pants down around my ankles and stuff. But then because I'm like trapped, I can't like move to turn around against it, and I slip over, and then I start shitting on the floor.
Oh no!
And then I'm like trapped and sort of bicycle kicking in the shit, and the shit's going everywhere and stuff. And people now are pounding on the door because there's only one bathroom in a 200 fucking strong party. People are like, we need to go to the bathroom, and I'm like trapped in there. Like I can't do shit. I'm trapped I'm still on the floor, like looking at these three things. People start like actually break down the door because they're like something's wrong. Like fucked on drugs or whatever, like we need to see what's going on. So they break down the door and then people are slipping over in my shit and they're horrified and terrified and they're calling out like, and like I can hear the disgust and they're like, oh, you're the horrible human being. And then like it sounds like they're gonna kick the shit out of me or whatever. Some people come by and they're like, they know me better and they're like, oh no, like, and then they carry me out of there and I'm covered in shit and my shit's getting on them and they like throw me in the shower and they shower me off and then they put me back in the bedroom and they close the door and I wake up in the bedroom and it's dark and I like bring my hand to my nose and I sniff and yeah, it's shit. It's like I can smell shit. Yeah, so this just happened. And then I sort of like sneak to the door and it's still dark in the bedroom. I crack the door and there's the line outside for the bathroom and stuff. And I'm like looking for anyone I know. And it's taken a while. Like I'm there for a few minutes. And it's like, because I've kind of newly been friends with a lot of these people, you know. Like I'm only good friends with a few people in this wide group of friends. And so then I see someone I know really well. And I'm like, hey, Sarah. She's like, yeah, Jez, what's happening? You know, so I'm just peeking out through the door. And I'm like, hey, Sarah, I think I shit on everyone. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I shit on everyone. I'm like, I shit. And everyone got covered in my shit. And she's like, I didn't hear anything about that. And I was like, all right, but how long have you been at the party? She's like, oh, I just got here like 20 minutes ago. I was like, well, this happened like half an hour ago. That's why you don't know about it. She's like, listen, hang on a second. And I got to go to the bathroom. She went to the bathroom. She comes back. And then she comes in the room. And she's like, all right, listen, like, I think you may not have shit on everyone because I don't know anything about it. And I was like, no, just because like not people wouldn't talk about that now, you know. Like, and then she kind of coaxes me out of the room, and I come out of the party, and I walk out in the backyard, and everyone's normal. No one's cursing. No one's looking at me like I'm a horrible fucking troll person or whatever. And like nothing seems to have happened, right? And it turns out that I hallucinated the entire thing. I never shit anywhere, but because I woke up in the room and it was all consistent. It all just seemed like it happened. Like, at that point, I wasn't high anymore. It just, I thought all this stuff had happened, right? And then I'm sort of just a little bit shivering. I got my arms crossed, and I'm like, Jesus, this has been a fucking rough trip, you know? And then a guy comes up to me that I know real well, and he's like, hey, Jez, I hear you're on mushrooms for the first time. And I was like, look at me, like, yeah. And he's like, you seem to be handling it really well. And I just looked at him, and I was like, I've got a really good mental image of you covered in my shit, you know? Like,
oh, shit.
So I'll tell that story and then we'll bang or whatever. Like, none of my stories make me look good. Like, that's always been my rule, even before I was in comedy. It's like you should never heighten reality to make yourself a winner because fuck you, you know? Like,
Totally.
Yeah, and also I just think a story's more fun when you're a loser, you know? It's like oh, I did this shit and it all worked out. It's like where's the? It's like Entourage. Like I love watching Entourage, but I feel really guilty about that because there's no peril in the story. Like everyone's gonna be fine all the time, and nothing bad is ever really gonna happen, and like that makes for a bad story, I think, in general. But somehow I love Entourage. I don't know why.
Just balance, maybe. Because you are constantly making yourself look bad.
Yeah,
someone win.
maybe. Yeah, I guess, anything I'm the Johnny Drama of that story. It's a good ref, by the way. Good on you for not getting it.
It's okay.
Good on you, because it's a bad show.
I've been having this all week. Some of my references are so old that I'm like, I'm leaving that in because I love it so much. Today I explained the reference and I was like, fuck it. And I was like, this is a fucking great reference, guys. This is what happens in this bit. Okay? He makes a fucking sword and that is what happens. That is it. So that is why it's a great reference, okay? Didn't make it funnier.
No, but at least people aren't sitting there for 30 minutes being like, what was that reference?
Exactly.
Which was my experience.
Yeah. Do you tell any of these
stories? There's a lot of them, but like that.
Do you tell these drug stories on stage as well? Or?
That one just now, I just for the first time, because like I had that well before I started comedy. That one I tried, because I run this like Monday night show in Perth called Infinite Jest, like our flagship show. It's like it's an open mic, but we sort of do cool stuff there sometimes. And we ran a show called Shroom Fest for the holiday. Shroom Fest, comic name Ari Shafir invented. And it's like a worldwide holiday with one weekend out of the year. Everyone who does mushrooms just does mushrooms on that weekend. We also join the collective unconscious, right? And so last year I thought, fuck it, I'll do a Shroom Fest show where everyone performs on mushrooms. And then everyone I knew was like, that's stupid. Don't do that. Like, that's the way to ruin your show. Like, you'll go to jail. They're probably right. It's a very bad idea to do a show. But I did it anyway, and it was great. It was fucking sick. The night got real weird. Like, people started stripping off clothes and stuff, like, and then increasing amounts of clothes throughout the night. And so by the time I got to the headliner came on with clothes, and then he did 20 minutes in his underwear. Like, just his underwear. And I was, like, hosting it, and then I was like, well, it'd be weird if I go on with clothes down. So then I stripped down to my underwear, and we came on, we had, like, a naked hug to close the show. And it was great. It was super fun. And so we thought, okay, let's do Shroomfest again this year. Because it's Shroomfest, and so many people who were coming, or, like, pretty much everyone who came was at least familiar with mushrooms, if not an enthusiast. I sort of just did all mushroom material, you know, and, like, stuff about recent experiences, and then I thought, you know what, I'll try this old story they used to tell to trick girls into having sex with me. And yeah, I tried it there for the first time. That's the only time I've ever done it on stage, and it worked really well. I'm going to keep working on it and stuff. I think it'll be in my show next year. But yeah, I mean, most of the stuff I used to tell, I can't even really remember that well because I've now been in a relationship for 4.5 years, and you don't do impress people anymore.
Yeah, you don't. Yes.
Yeah, and it's also like I told her all the stories when we first got together. That's how I had sex with her. So she's heard them all. I can't tell them again. And so now it's been essentially 4.5, 5 years since I've needed to use any of these, and I think you just forget. Like without retelling a story, you forget the beats, you forget how it goes, you forget what's funny about it. You know, it's like if you don't do a bit for 2 years, you can't just bring it back and have it be fresh. So I don't know, there's probably stuff I'll plumb out of there eventually, but it's like I'd almost rather for material just to come up with new life experiences, and it's more fresh, you know, like it's you experiencing it rather than like this old version of you, which is a whole different person, you know. You 5 years ago is a fucking idiot. You 5 years ago would never act. You now would never act the way you 5 years ago acted, and I almost don't want to have to defend that guy. Like, like he's a fucking moron, you know. Like, yeah.
Every little bit of self-awareness goes, oh god, I hate myself even more.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, it's like being a stand-up as well. It's like you look at the material you were doing 6 months ago, and you're like, why did I think that was funny?
They just don't get me.
Yeah. When I told that audience full of people to run out and get abortions, I was pushing comedy forward.
You're welcome, comedy.
Yeah. I took that one for you.
So your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
You might talk about your family. Your family still alive?
Yeah, some of them. So I'll say this to you. I used to say, just before I got into comedy, people asked about my parents. I would say that both my parents have passed away.
Sure.
Now, father has passed away, and we had a great relationship. My mother, when I was 19, passed beyond the level of insanity that I chose to keep her as a relevant entity. and I just stopped talking to her, right? So she's still around and stuff, but she's just a crazy person, right? Like, after my girlfriend and I started getting serious, I sat her down, and she's only had one boyfriend before, and he cheated on her. And I sat her down, like, a few months after we really started getting serious, and I said, baby, I have a confession. And she looked real scared. And she thought, she told me later, she thought either I had given her herpes, or AIDS, or I was cheating on her. And I sat her down, I was like, listen, I have a confession, I like to be honest and stuff all the time, and so, baby, I have to tell you this, and I really hope you're not mad and stuff. And she really was like, what the fuck is this guy giving me? What has he done to me? And I was like, so I told you, my mother was dead. She's actually just crazy, and I don't talk to her anymore. And she was like, thank God. That's the best news you could have given me, because I hadn't, like, completely fucked over her life. I don't talk to my mother anymore. My brother, like, quite close with, like, he kept a relationship with her for about 5-6 years longer than me. But then, like, when he had kids and stuff, she started doing some crazy shit. Like, she's a, what do you call it, pathological liar? Yeah, so she's, like, broken, right? She can't decide to tell the truth. She just has to lie to everyone all the time. And so, yeah, she started trying to, like, turn his kids against him. Like, she would tell them lies about him and their mother and stuff to, like, because she wants everyone to love her.
Power.
Yeah, well, so she had, like, a real rough childhood, right? Like, she was born in India.
Right.
Is
your mum Indian, or
she is what's what they call Anglo-Indian?
Okay.
Where she's like a mixture. Like she's look at my mother, you'd be like she's white essentially. But then to look at my grandmother, you're like, oh, okay, I see like a substantial amount of Indian blood. But then like the grandmother married like an Armenian guy who's like top tier whites, but they're white. She married an Armenian guy, so then my mother looks pretty much white, and then some of her siblings look a little bit darker. Yeah, and then more or less, I'm like probably, I guess like an 8th or a 16th Indian or something like that.
Christian or Sikh?
They are Anglican, which I think is it's a pretty low rent kind of on like the guilds thing. My dad was an atheist, and like a very avowed atheist, but I went to like Catholic school and stuff, and so like he would come to the events, say confirmation and like first communion, all that kind of stuff, but then he would stand outside and then he would just be there, and like I'd just go and see him afterwards, and like my parents were together and stuff at the time, but like he just didn't want to come to the church because he didn't want to validate that kind of thing, and like that was actually, but because I'm an atheist also, I like to say that I was raised Catholic, therefore I'm an atheist, because Catholicism is fucking bullshit. The original sin is the stupidest thing in the world. Like, you can't be like, oh, you were born? Well, now you fucking owe me, because I'm God. It's definitely true that because like a major figure in my life, being my father, was an atheist, even though he never sort of pushed it at me, it sort of allowed me to realize there were options outside of religiosity. And my mother was never like religious. She just wanted people to see that we were religious. So she's big on perception and growing up in India, like that's the whole thing about like class and the perception of class. Because her childhood was rough. Like the family had servants and stuff, right? Because you've got to have servants, and you also, the Anglo-Indian community has got this whole thing of like trying to be as white and British as possible. You don't want to be Indian, you want to be like British and stuff. And so what happened was the families like sort of had a downturn economically, and then they couldn't afford to keep a servant and send her to school. So they took her out of school because it was much more important that the neighbours saw they still had servants. And so that was the kind of value placed on her, you know, as a girl child in India and stuff, and in that kind of family. And then she had this brutal thing happen. And then, because, you know, it's all about perception, they were like, you're lying. They never accepted that it happened. They're like, you know, I talk anything about this. So that broke my mother, right? Like, so that's what turned her into, like, gave her whatever problem she has, like, emotionally or mentally, whatever you'd say. Because at that point, no one's on your side. Everyone's betrayed you. No one cares about you. So she was always just looking for an out of the family. And the whole family moved to Australia. She's real pretty and stuff. So once she goes to Australia, she's like a teenager or whatever. She's like, right, how do I get out of this family? And so she met my father. She was like, hey, I love you or whatever. And he was like, great, cool. Like, he didn't know there was anything a problem. And he's like, oh, awesome, cool, let's get married and stuff. So like they got married, but like because of all this trauma, so she would have to drink to oblivion to have sex, right? And that's real rough on my father, obviously, because it's like, oh, my wife has to like pass out unconscious for me to have sex with her and stuff. But she really wanted kids, because she wanted girls. She wanted allies against the world, the patriarchy, the people who hurt her and stuff. She would grit her teeth and drink till she was basically unconsciousness, right? And then she conceived, and my brother came along, and she was like, fuck, another dude. I don't like dudes, right? And so a few years went by, and she's like, let's try again. I don't like this, but I really want a girl. And then so she conceived again, and I came along. And so all the earliest pictures of me and my brother of us in dresses with long curly hair, because she really, really wanted a girl, which is interesting. But then so growing up, like eventually like they split because it was a really unhealthy marriage and stuff. Yeah, growing up she would lie to everyone and blah, 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 blah. At one point she stole us from the father. Like she picked me up from school one day. I mean, this is getting...
No.
I'm happy to go wherever direction you want to go.
No, that's fine, man.
But, she picked me up from school one day. Like, she picked up me and my brother, and she just drove a different place. Like, she drove a different direction. I was like, hey, why are we going home? Like, home is that way and stuff. She was like, no, we're not going home. We're never going home again. But I literally walk out with my school bag, and, like, that's it.
Fuck.
Right? And so we went to a women's shelter. She told... I want to say here, this might sound like I have bias or whatever, but like, I've since gotten the full story from everything, right, before my father died. And but she told them that, like, oh, he's beaten me and all this kind of stuff, but it was all made up out of whole cloth. And she admitted as much, like, years later. But she just, like, wanted an out. So, like, then there was this whole thing of, you know, suing for custody and all kind of stuff. And the way the court systems were at the time, you just go with the mother, more or less. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, then my brother and I didn't see our father for, like, 4 years. I think I was probably, let's say, from, like, 9 to 13. So not an important developmental time for a child at all, just for a boy who was raised as a girl for a little while. So I didn't see him for years, and then like every now and then we'd like run into him in weird places, like we'd be down the local supermarket or whatever, and we'd just see our dad. He'd be like, "Oh my god, it's so great to see you!" And then like we'd have this whole catch up, and then he would give us like a year's worth of allowance of like $5, like you give $5 a week. And then he would just say, he would be like, wait here. And he would go and get like 55s and be like, this is for you and this is for you. And then like we'd sort of catch up stuff. And eventually like they started to repair having some kind of relationship, functional relationship, but not be together, but just to have us all in each other's lives and things. And my father like would pay for a lot of our education and like dentistry and all that kind of stuff, you know, like to be a father. Yeah. And so then after those few years and stuff, my brother and I both got very close to my father. I lived with him for a few years. Like I moved out of home. We initially actually got my mother to move out of the home that my brother and I and her lived in. We got her to move out with her boyfriend at the time. And my brother and I stayed in and rented it. And so I was like, say 17, 18. After that, like, I moved away and I came home and, like, I stayed with my dad for, like, a year or so. And, like, we just sort of lived together. And it was partly to sort of maybe make up for lost time a little bit. But, yeah, he was a great dude. Yeah, really interesting cat. And really smart guy. Yeah. Very much influenced, like, a lot of things, despite those years' absence.
That's great, man. Glad you had time to catch up with him, man. What did he do?
Before he ever, like, met my mother, he was a jailbird. Oh. I only found out about this when I was, like, 20. He sat me down and he's like, I got some stuff to tell you. I was like, have you given me herpes? But he was like, no, I've got some stuff to tell you. And, but yeah, it turns out, he had, like, a child with a woman previously, right? Mm-hmm. So when he was, say, 19, 20, he had the problem that I had when I was 19 and 20, which is that he assumed he was the smartest dude in any room, which is problematic. Because sometimes you might be right, but then a bunch of times you'd be wrong. And so he worked for a bank, and then he thought, I reckon I can embezzle money from this bank. And then he tried, and he got caught. He went away for 6 months, right? And then while he was in jail, he met a bunch of people who were like, hey, man, do you want to learn how to steal cars? And he was like, sure, I do. And then he got out, and then he stole cars. And then got caught for that. And then he went away for like a year. And then while he was in, he met a bunch of people who do break and enters, and they were like, "Hey, you want to like join our crew when we get out?" And he was like, "Yeah, cool." And then he got out, and then he was doing B&Es. And while he was doing that, then he met this woman, and they got together, and they conceived a child. And then he got caught for break and enters because it's like now his third offense and stuff, and all the escalating crimes. They were like, "You're going to jail for 7 years." He went to jail. The baby's not born at this point. The woman he's with came to jail to see him, and she said, listen, you're not going to have a relationship with this child. And so that was it. He never saw her again. Then he went to jail for 7 years, and he was like, I should probably stop escalating crimes. And then he got out, and he just started his whole life again. didn't hear from this person. Years later, like, I think the reason maybe it came up when I was 20 was, like, the child had gotten in contact with him. She was like, hey, I want to reconnect with you and stuff. And so he was like, hey, all this stuff is coming back. You should probably know about all these things. But I never knew this. Like, when I was growing up, as far as I knew, my dad was straight as an arrow, never lied, never stole, never did anything wrong. And then I stole like a 10-cent piece of like 3 flavored chewing gum from a supermarket one time when I was like 7. And he found out and he got furious, and then he took me to the store and he sat me out with the manager, and the manager told me I was going to go to jail and like scared the shit out of me, and then I like never stole another thing in my life. And then at 20 he was like, yeah, so I did all these crimes, right? And I was in prison for ages, and then he told me the story about prison, and I was like, fuck you for telling me off for stealing chewing gum. You're a piece of shit. He's trying to be a good dad, but like, fuck him, man. That's not fair. That's false pretenses. But like, yeah, he had some really interesting experiences in jail. Like at one point there was a hit out on him. This guy thought that my dad had ratted him out, and my dad says he didn't rat him out, as far as I know. But the guy was going to kill him, so like my dad like connived his way into protective custody somehow, and then he was in protective custody for like a year, and he's playing cards with the guy. And my father folds, and then the guy like shows him his hand, and as my father tells me, he's like, and that's when I knew he wasn't going to kill me. And I was like, is that really enough evidence? But he's like, no, in prison, that's how it goes and stuff. Apparently, if you show your hand to someone, you're no longer going to have a hit out on them. And then he was just fine after that. And he did the rest of his time and he got out. And then he just restarted his whole life, met my mother, and then, the rest is that. But yeah, it was really interesting to find that out.
Your dad had an interesting life, but it's not shitty. Like the fact that your dad like 3 flavored chewing gum, and then when you're 20, he goes, oh, by the way, son, I've done all this, and you go, what have you got to compare?
Yeah, by the way, I embezzled as a starter. Like, fuck you, motherfucker.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so what's your bro do?
Oh, he's a teacher.
Do you enjoy that?
He does. I think because he's been doing it for a long time. He's been doing it for probably 10 years. I think probably you get a little bit tired of any industry because he's got kids. Like they're great kids, and I love being an uncle because I can visit and don't have to deal with anything else. I can just be like, I'm bored now, and I go home. I don't know. I think in a perfect world, or in a world where he didn't have responsibilities, he would probably leave it at this point and do something else. But he's very good at it. His kids love him. The weird thing is now he's been doing it long enough that he's taught like children who have grown up to be hot chicks. Because I mentioned this before, but like I hosted this adults only circus thing a few weeks back, or like a couple months back now. There were like dancing girls in it, like hot girls in lingerie and stuff, dancing around. And my brother came to one of the shows. I gave him some like comp tickets or whatever, and I was like the MC. One of the dancing girls, who I was like being like, oh my god, like biting knuckles, like she's super hot. She came up to me backstage. She was like, hey, my 3rd grade teacher is in the room tonight. Is he your brother? And I was like, holy shit, it fucking is. And I was messaging my brother being like, this fucking hot girl dancing is like, was a child that you taught?
No.
And he was like, yeah, I know. And I was like, is that weird? He was like, no, it's not weird. I was like, yeah, it's fucking weird.
Totally.
That's really weird. So it's interesting. But I mean, he finds it very rewarding. And I did ask her, and I was like, you tell me the truth. Like, was he a good teacher, bad teacher, or whatever? She was like, no, he was a great teacher. And I think he's really great with my niece and my nephew and stuff. Like he's an awesome dad. So I think he probably is just great with kids. At one point, I was going to be a teacher, but I became a neuroscientist, kind of, a little.
Saving lives
a
now.
little, a little-ish.
Yeah. And you're getting depression rather than back problems now.
Well, yeah, but I've created a lot in my poor indebted girlfriend.
Needs of the few, the needs of the few, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. The needs of me particularly.
You're going to tour the show for how much longer?
So I'm going to do this show for Edinburgh Fringe, and then that's kind of the end of my year festival run. Because I'm going to go back to Perth, and then I'm just doing gigs and stuff until Perth Fringe next year, which is February. And that's for sure the retiring of the title. Yeah, the title next year is all planned and stuff, and then I've got probably 20, 30, maybe almost 40 minutes of that show done. And then some of the stuff that's in here is going to be in the new one in Perth, because it's not been seen in a show there. Because, it's like new to this festival, but like because the festival run started in February, it's like this. I've already retired stuff out of the show and replaced it with new stuff. So Yeah, so I'm probably 2/3 of the way towards the next one.
Also a musician as well, is that right? Is that right?
Yeah, it's a leading question here. Yeah, I'm buying a loop machine. So I've beatboxed recreationally for probably 10 years doing it, and I've never sort of meant to do anything with it. And I used to sing a lot and stuff as well. Like I was in a musical actually a couple of years ago, a couple of fringes ago, a comedic musical. Somebody I auditioned for it and I got it, and it was good, and like I can sing pretty well. And yeah, I've always been super interested in like live looping and stuff, like stuff like Reggie Watts does, and like plenty of other people do well, and like Beatty Man does that kind of stuff in a non-comedic context. And yeah, so for the show next year, like as soon as I get back from Edinburgh, pretty much, I've got all the equipment picked out. It's like $1,300. I got to ask the girlfriend for that money too. Yeah, I'm going to buy this loop machine, and then I've written some songs for it, and then there's another bit where it's not song, but it's like I already know like the effects I'm going to use and stuff to really build out this bit and sort of create a soundscape behind it. Yeah, it's gonna be an extra bow in my string. I don't want to be a musical comic. Is the thing. I don't want people to book me and demand that the loop machine comes. But I like the idea of having it as an extra element. Yeah,
we're all cyborgs, man. We're using microphones, just another extra, isn't it, really? So
yeah, but fuck musical comics.
As long as you don't take the ukulele on stage, then you're okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a girl, so I can't get away with it. Yeah, no, I don't know. I feel real ambivalent about it. Just because I've shat on musical comics the last 4.5 years, you know? Like, even before I got on stage, I was like, musical comedy. What really changed my mind was this, there's a Perth-based comedian called Matt Storer. Really great comic. Probably, let's say, a year ahead of me or whatever. Awesome comic, and was just good at comedy. And about a year ago, he just pulled out this piano that he's been playing piano for years, and he's great at it. And he had written all these comedic songs, and it was just an extra thing that he pulled out. And like his show that year just had 4 songs in it. He still did loads of great stand up in it, and that was the thing where I it kind of turned a switch in my head where I went, even though there are plenty of musical comics who are not good at comedy or not good at stand up, let's say, doesn't mean you can't be a good stand up with a musical element that you can use from time to time. And so I'm definitely happy with where my stand-up is progressing. There's obviously a long way to go all the time. But I'm solid as a stand-up, and I get booked as a stand-up, and I get paid as a stand-up. So if I can keep doing that and keep working on that and then also have a loop machine, well, I'm going to get a lot more money from bookers because everyone wants some fucking hook. And just being a straight white male comedian is not a hook. I hope it's going to go well.
So what in the last couple of years have you kind of gone, oh fuck man, the muscle is getting stronger? The moment you thought that, like the quickening, like
about a year ago is when I first wrote this joke or this bit that I do, which within it says like, oh, I owe my girlfriend $12,000, right? Which currently is not true. The real amount is like 18 or 19 now. Every time I mention it, it's fucking higher. But about a year ago, I wrote that joke for the first time, and it was $5,000. And I was like, wow, that's so much money to owe somebody. And it's so much money, you know? It's so much. It's $5,000. And then over this last year, it has ballooned out absurdly to $19,000. And the reason for that is because we were going to move. We were going to move from Perth, which is very remote. And the scene has gotten bigger, but it's still a little bit stifling just in terms of opportunities and also the level of people around. It's like you want to have real high-level people to learn from on a regular basis as opposed to just seeing them occasionally when they come to town. And so in order to stay there, we kind of, because my girlfriend got this great job opportunity, and we had this real, because at that point we've been together for, let's say, 3.5, 4 years, and we had this real moment of crisis. And it was really the first in our relationship because we'd always planned to move away together. Like, as a veterinarian, which my partner is, like, you can kind of work anywhere. And, like, when I first started doing stand-up and I first got together, it was, like, the same week. And so we always sort of were planning for leaving and moving, and I would progress in comedy, and she would come with me and you know, work. But she got this great job opportunity, which would be, she's, like, the youngest, like, unit coordinator of any university for veterinary medicine ever, like, in the world. She got given this opportunity to do that. But it wouldn't mean she had to commit. They asked her to commit to stay there for 3 more years. And this was a year ago, and I was already at the point where I was like, it's hard. Now it's limiting my growth. And I started late. I started at 29. It's like, I can't be limiting my growth, because otherwise I'll just not make it. Like, it's easy not to make it in comedy. Loads of people don't do it. And so we had this real thing where we said, okay, what are our options here? What can we do? We thought about, okay, do I move over to, say, Melbourne, which is kind of one of the comedy meccas in Australia, at least, So do I move there and we try and do a long-distance relationship? They never work out. I've been around long enough to know that, they don't. Even if it works for a little while, it's like at some point somebody cheats or whatever because you're just so lonely and then it just falls apart. And, like, this is for sure the most loving, important, romantic relationship I've ever been in. For me and for her as well. Like, I've been married before. Like, that marriage was nothing on this. Like, this is real, true love, Like, not in the sense that there's one person for everyone, but in the sense of, like, I've never felt this much care about another person, So I don't want to not be in this relationship, and she doesn't want to not be in the relationship. So we're like, okay, do we do that? It's probably not going to work out. Does she move with me and not do this job, right? Which is going to set her up in her industry for life. And it's a great opportunity, and it's sort of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to come around so early. If she would do it, and she was maybe willing to... it's one of the options on the table, well, then the bitterness and resentment of that decision will poison our relationship, and we'll break up anyway. And now she's given up this thing, and we probably won't be together. And I'm like, well, that's not an option. We had this sort of third option that I came up with my friend, right? And with this guy, Glenn, that I was talking about. And I didn't feel good about this as an option as a person. Because essentially I was like, okay, what can I do to offset the fact that I'm in Perth? Because obviously if I stay in Perth and I just take the hit, well, now I'm going to resent it and that'll poison the relationship. And so I sort of thought, well, if she takes this job, she's going to be making an extra 10 grand a year. And what if she kind of underwrites me a little bit for touring so I can go to other cities, particularly do festivals, right, and like move forward artistically and creatively and career-wise, because it's definitely like affects your ability to get booked, just that people see you go to other festivals. And so we had this conversation where we sort of tossed up all these options. I said, what do you kind of think? And she said, well, I guess, I'm going to make this 10 grand. I can just give you the 10 grand. And I was like, baby, that's crazy. Don't give me 10 grand. It won't be anywhere near 10 grand. But just, I guess, whatever it cost, What I thought it was going to be was like, say, 6 or 7 or whatever. And instead of 10, it's become 14.
Oh my God.
Because I committed to all these festivals, and it's not so much the expense of going to the festival or even the accommodation there, because a lot of that stuff almost balances out with ticket sales and whatever. The expense is I still pay rent at home the whole time I'm away, but I'm not even working my part-time job. And so now I'm up to like $19,000. And so I got to go home, and I have to pull a bunch of double shifts and try and get this number down. Like, because when I got that circus hosting thing, that gave me $4,000. If I hadn't gotten it, I'd owe her $23,000 right now. And that came completely out of the blue. Like, that was not planned. So I'm very glad it did. Yeah. But yes, I forget how we got into that. But
that's cool. It's just like the moment, the quickening of like the moment.
Oh yeah. So essentially, I said all that just to say that almost every festival I've done over this last year, because I've done now, like, I think this is my 5th festival in the year. Every single festival I have leveled up, as my friend Glenn puts it. Yeah. Like, there was things where like hosting the Nasty Show, like I hosted every night of it in Sydney because Glenn was like, I don't want to do it, even though it's great. Hosting that show for an hour, doing my solo show an hour right before it, and running from my solo show to it. It's like, 2 hours on stage, like that's such a rarity. And I mean, Edinburgh Fringe is great. There's so many opportunities and stuff, but like usually throughout the year, you don't get those kinds of opportunities. But yes, I've stepped up like multiple times throughout this year, and like hosting that circus thing. I've never done anything like that before. Like, I've emceed comedy nights. I've never been the sole comedian hosting people flipping through the air, dancing girls, contortionists, all kinds of shit. and I bought a fucking suit for it, and like did it in a suit. I've never performed in a suit before. That's cool. That feels real great. And the audience is like, I trust you now, and it's actually a real cheat. But yeah, that was a moment. Yeah, going to Adelaide Festival, which is a brutal festival, like performing to small numbers and still doing a good job, like under adversity. That was a great moment. Going to the Melbourne Comedy Festival where I didn't take a show, but I just did a bunch of spots. That was a moment where I sort of went, I'm a lot better than I thought I was. And the reason why is because I got a lot better this year. And I was still thinking of myself as like, say, before 3 festivals ago. I was like, oh, that's the level I'm at. And then I did 3 festivals, and then I went to this thing, and I was just doing spots, and like, not that comedy's a competition at all, but I was like blowing people out of the water who were like more experienced than me. And then I was like, oh, this is this year. This is all the support that Nicole has given me, right? The freedom to do all these festivals has absolutely skyrocketed my ability, because just the opportunity, because there's nothing that can compete with stage time. There's nothing. And particularly stage time in all these different environments has been great. Like even the different cities in Australia is great. Edinburgh's been such a great growth opportunity. You know, just to be playing to different crowds and making your stuff have to work and stuff. Like the adversity is what makes you grow, you know? Like particularly every time you fail, that's a great opportunity to get better. And when you just, like, particularly Perth, you know, like you stay in like this small pool, you'll just play to the pool. You'll do what works there, and you never get challenged, you never really grow. You grow like really incrementally, but then going to festivals, doing 50 minutes at a time, doing an hour, hosting shows and playing different crowds and seeing so many better comics. That's such a big thing too.
Inspiring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the kind of thing where you're like, wow, that person's angle from 20 years in is amazing. It's incredible, and it just makes you better to know that they can do that, whether or not you mimic or steal things, like not necessarily steal, but like or get inspired by. But just the fact that they're at that level makes you immediately work harder. Like, you see people sometimes, and you're like, I have to go home and write. And it's just because you go, yeah, there's so much more to grow. There have been real watershed moments, like, let's say 5 times this year. I've gone, wow, I'm at another level. That was not the case when I was, like, stuck in Perth.
Sounds like your relationship is a great, solid foundation, man.
I'm stepping all over it, I'll tell you.
Solid.
Yeah.
This is great, man. Oh, that's great, man. That's really good. So Jez, we work with some scene next. You're doing the Edinburgh Fringe, and you're going to go back to Perth after this, and that's your end of your run, is that right?
Yeah. So I'm going back to Perth. So I'm here for August. Like, I'm doing sex, lies, and video games Mondays, Thursdays, Fridays, and then spots throughout the weeks and stuff. And then end of the month I go back to Perth. I'm there for a couple of months, and then I'm going to Melbourne and Sydney, not for festivals, but just for gigs, but just for like a weekend each. And the only reason I'm going is I got booked at what I think people would probably agree is the best venue in the country, the Comedy Store in Sydney, where was a thing that I like last year I wrote a whole list of goals, and I met almost all of them, and a couple of them I didn't, but like I did better because I had the goals to meet, you know? Like, there were probably things on that list I wouldn't have done if I hadn't planned. And this year I didn't do that, but I had one thing that I just sort of said to myself, like, I really would like to do this. And that's to work the Comedy Store, like, to get booked there. And what I said stupidly in, like, May, I was like, I tell you what, I want to do the Comedy Store this year. And that only gives me, like, 7 months. I'm doing it in November. I don't know how I got in, but I did. Cool, and man. So I'm going to do like a week in Melbourne and then a week in Sydney, where the Comedy Store is at. Like, Sydney's, like, those are paid gigs, and I'll get some other ones there too. And I'm probably getting paid in Melbourne, but it's just like, because of the flights, you may as well do a week in each. And then, apart from that, I won't be leaving until until Adelaide Fringe probably next year. Cool. But yeah, Perth Fringe, I'll have number 1 comedy, great fun. Jez Watt's SEO nightmare, and I'll have a fucking loop machine in it.
Great, can't wait to see that. So Jez, where can we come find you on, like, your social media and stuff?
Oh yeah, well I do a podcast as well, like, because you get podcast listeners, a little cross pollination. I actually just launched a comedy podcast network, the Infinite Jest Comedy Network. So you search that on iTunes, that's there. And like, I do a podcast called Brief Interviews with Hideous Men. It's just 4 or 5 comics hanging out talking shit after a show. Infinite Jez on all the social medias.
Well, Jez, thanks for coming on the show, man. Thanks
for having me.
Thanks, man. Great.
And that was the very funny, very honest Jez Watts. He's going to be around the country, Australia, I don't know where he's going to be next. Go and find him on Facebook, go follow him on Twitter, and go and see him live. Go see The Nasty Show. That sounds like fun, to be honest. I'd like to try that myself. So that was Jez Watts for episode 56. We've got a very funny comedian, Zach Dyer, who was in the finals for the So You Think You're Funny in 2017. He is up next. That's episode 57. Now, if you like this podcast, you can follow us on Twitter. We're there at The Comedy Defect. If you want to follow me, it's at Winter Phonander. Again, I'm telling you about the Guinness Encyclopedia. I am raking as many jokes as I can out of that book. I'm putting them on Twitter under the handle at Guinness Jokes. So go check them out on Twitter. Go follow it. Come see me do them at the Leicester Festival in 2018, and that show is going to be run by Christopher Norton Walker. The date will be on my Facebook, on my website, all of those places. Now, if you like this podcast and you want to support us, go to Patreon, type in The Comedy Defect Podcast, and you can donate as little as $1. As much as you feel this podcast is worth, and those of you who don't donate, that's alright. Just share your favourite episode, tell your friends about it, or look, just go on your phone and leave us a nice, honest review. Look, put in, the maximum amount of stars, and, just a funny comment would be nice. Just, your favourite episode, whatever you want to do. Just have fun with it, it's right on your phone. Just go for it. Enjoy yourself. But that was episode 56 with Jez Watts. Next month, the last Wednesday of the month, episode 57 is with a very funny Zach Dyer. So I'll say this for the rest of the year. You enjoy your break. Enjoy the run-up to the end of the year. And just have a rest. Just get things in order. Get those things done you need to do. But don't strain yourself too much. Look, it's the holidays. Next year, 2018, we've got Zach Dyer, finalist for So You Think You're Funny. I wish you a happy new year for 2018, guys. Enjoy the rest of the break.